Good afternoon, everybody. Kyle Broda here from FullSkillsExamPrep.com, and welcome to your newest lesson for this week. This lesson is regarding the self-employed category, and you'll see it's a very big topic, very interesting as well, and I hope you enjoy the lesson, and of course I hope it's useful for you to pass your ICCRC Full Skills Exam. Alright, so you're going to see that this is a very, very interesting topic to study for your ICCRC Full Skills Exam. As you know, the economic categories are pretty big, but one of the tricks that you can do to make it more manageable for your studies is just to split these down into smaller areas. And of course, self-employed is one of these smaller areas. So we're going to explore this one thoroughly today. Alright, if you're following along in your test day data book, you can take a look at page 31 and 32 to see this information. In the exam simulations, of course, we have questions for you. If you're taking the seminar, of course, this comes up in the seminar as well. Again, just to get you ready for your big ICCRC Full Skills Exam. Okay, so you're going to have to obviously read quite a bit after this video, or use these reading tools in collaboration with this video in order for you to get a really full understanding of the self-employed category. This is all on the website in a very easy to follow step-by-step page. So all you have to do is just click on those, read through the links, and then you're going to really master this area. Okay, we have quite a few goals for today. We're going to learn about the self-employed category, of course, and how it relates to your ICCRC Full Skills Exam. We're going to do this through quite a few questions as well. One will be, of course, just those general definitions that people need to meet in order to qualify for the self-employed stream. In terms of experience, we're going to dig into those little words in the definition as well, just to see exactly what is meant in each of those as well. Okay, well, the first little question here, of course, is who is a self-employed person? According to Regulation 88, you can see that there are three big points that the government is looking for in this. So someone who has the relevant experience. We're going to dig deeply into relevant experience as well, just because it can mean quite a few different things, and we want to make this as straightforward as possible for you. We have the intention and ability to be self-employed in Canada, and of course, that same intention and ability to make a significant contribution to specified economic activities. You're going to see that almost each word in this definition plays a large role in trying to figure out what is exactly meant by that definition. So that's why we're going to go through this really step by step. Okay, it is very important to remember that the applicant must meet all of these requirements, not just one, not just two, all three of these ones. And you're going to see within these, there are quite a few requirements as well. If you take a look at Regulation 100, then you can see that if they don't meet these definitions, it doesn't matter if the person is the best soccer player in the entire world, the best librarian in the entire world with 100 years of experience, they will not get processed. It won't carry on to the next steps of the application. Okay, back to that question, who is a self-employed person? So we can see that the person has to have relevant experience. Let's take a look at what this means in detail as well. Okay, so we can see that when we take a look at experience, we're going to divide this down into two sort of broader themes. One is with regard to time, and one is with regard to the role that these people need to have completed during that time. So as you can see, there are a few different parts in this as well. You have two one-year periods of experience of self-employment in cultural activities, or two one-year periods of experience at participation at a world-class level in these cultural activities. For cultural activities, they can do a combination of both as well. Okay, an important note as well is just that the experience has to be within the last 5 years. All right, so when we take a look at this in terms of athletics, we can see that it pretty much follows the same idea. You have those timelines again, 2 one-year periods of experience of self-employment, or 2 one-year periods of experience at a world-class level, or a combination of the two. And again, that experience has to be within the last 5 years. When we take a look at farming, it is slightly different. So we have 2 one-year periods of experience of managing a farm. And same thing, this has to be within 5 years, of course. Okay, let's move on to go deeper into the meaning of experience, especially when we look at this in terms of time and role. So specifically with time, we can see, as we saw before, that you have a few options for this. The one that we're going to look deeply into is this first one here, 2 one-year periods of experience in self-employment, in cultural activities, athletics, or farm management. We're going to move on into these other ones as well, just to give examples again as to how they relate to the topic in general, and of course how this can relate to your exam. As you can see in A, the 2 one-year periods of self-employment, this one has to do with farmers, as you can see from the picture, cultural activities, as you can see from the person playing the piano, and athletics, as you can see from the athlete over there as well. All right, let's take a look at an example of experience in terms of time and role, especially specifically with regard to the 2 one-year periods of experience in self-employment and cultural activities, athletics, or experience in farm management. This one's going to be about farm management. Okay, so we have Juan. Juan is a farm manager who works depending on the weather and the crops. As such, he oversaw a crew of 80 workers on a carrot farm in his native Hungary from April 2012 to February 2014. Unfortunately, there was a drought in his country, so he only worked from July 2014 to March 2015 before being laid off. So with this, the first thing that you're going to do is just take a look at the time that they give you. With this case, they have April 2012 to February 2014. And the second time that they give you is July 2014 to March 2015. In real life, you can see that that is 22 months, about 22 months, and just about 7 months for his second round of work. What we're going to do, of course, is take a look at this as per Regulation 88, because that's what plays a large role in your exam, of course. And with this, we can see that the 22 months equals a year in there, and the 7 months equals 0 years. So you can see that he would not meet those experience requirements, even though he worked 29 months in total. Remember that it is 2 one-year periods. Okay, and that 1 year has to be continuous. You can't add up 5 months here, 2 months there, etc. to add up to 1 year. It has to be 12 months continuous plus 12 months continuous. So unfortunately, even though he has 29 months, which would equal way over 2 years, he does not have those 2 years in there. Okay, so that is an example of A over here, 2 one-year periods of experience in self-employment, in cultural activities, athletics, or experience in farm management. Okay, let's take a look at the second option. This one, as you can see, relates only to people engaged in cultural activities and athletes as well. Okay, so with this one here, we have Mark. So Mark worked as a professional photographer from May 2012 to July 2013, and also from October 2013 to June 2015. His photos were frequently on the covers of international magazines such as National Geographic, Sports Illustrated, and Oprah magazine. Because of his work, he won several prizes at some of the largest international photography expos in the world during this time. Alright, so we can see with this person here, it doesn't really mention that he's self-employed. It mentions he's a professional photographer. And when you take a look at his role as well, you can see that he is definitely at the world-class level. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. What we're looking at specifically here is the time that he's worked in this role. So the time that they gave us was May 2012 to July 2013 and October 2013 to June 2015. In real life, that would be around 14 months for the first gap and around 21 months for the second gap. When we take a look at this as per Regulation 88, we could see that he has that 14 months adds up to a year, and the 21 months also adds up to a year because we have those 12 months continuous. Okay, so that sums up the second one, the 2 one-year periods of experience in participation at a world-class level. Remember that that one, of course, is only for people engaged in cultural activities and athletics, because I'm not too sure if you could farm at a world-class level or how they would measure that, of course. For these athletes and cultural people, they can also use a combination of A and B. And here is an example of that. Okay, so Karen. Karen is one of the top water polo players in the world. After 1.5 years of playing professionally, she recently won silver in the 2014 World Water Polo Championships in New York and was given the Most Valuable Player award because she played even though she had broken a knee. Unfortunately, the knee injury meant that she will need a year of recovery, but luckily she was hired as coach of the team from June 2014 to July 2015. Alright, so what we're going to take a look at here is the time in real life, of course, and the time as per Regulation 88, and her role as well. Okay, so we can see that the time they gave us was 2012 to 2014. They weren't too specific with that, but you can see that that would equal the 1.5 years that they mentioned before. Okay, they talked about her coaching as well, which was June 2014 to July 2015. So in actual time, we could put that one in as 1.5 years and 13 months. According to Regulation 88, that would equal 1 year and 1 year. When we take a look at this in terms of her role, we could see that she spent that 1.5 years in real life, but 1 year as per Regulation 88, participating at a world-class level in water polo. And we can see as well that she spent 1 year as a coach, so being self-employed, coaching at the top level as well. All right, so we combined those two elements over there, and hopefully that gave you a better idea of how role and time can play a role, of course, in deciding if someone qualifies to immigrate under the self-employed category. Okay, so you might be wondering what the difference is between someone who is self-employed and someone who is at a world-class level. This is a pretty big topic as well. So at a world-class level is generally people who are known internationally by others who are also deemed to be at the highest level of this activity. Okay, so you have this professional soccer player here from Colombia, and other soccer players in the world at the highest level would consider him to be a colleague as well. In terms of cultural activities, you have the same idea. You have people who are again considered to be the highest levels, and that is of course internationally known all over the world as well. In some sports, maybe the people aren't exactly well known, maybe it's not as popular of a sport or something like that, or the cultural activity. We'll take a look at the accepted cultural activities and sports later on. And you'll see that for curling, for example, maybe curling isn't exactly that popular in a lot of other countries, so maybe this person could be one of the best curlers in the entire world, but as curling is maybe not that popular in some other countries, maybe he wouldn't be considered to be world-class or well-known all over the world. However, according to OP8, you can see that he doesn't have to be known internationally, he just has to be at the top level of the cultural activity or sport. Okay, so we can see at a world-class level, you have people who are known internationally, in general, and people who just perform at the highest levels of the activity they engage in. And just like I said before, it's possible that the person is not well known, but if they're still at the highest level of that activity, and that activity is acceptable, as we'll see later on, then that person would be considered at a world-class level. Okay, let's move on to talk about self-employed now. Okay, so this makes up the bulk of people who apply under the self-employed category as well. All right, so you have NOC Major Group 51, which we'll take a look at in a minute. As people who work in these categories with regard to art and culture, recreation and sports, you have trainers, editors, writers, that kind of thing as well. And just like I said before, most people who apply under the self-employed category would be self-employed rather than at a world-class level. Okay, so you have this in your book, of course, in your test day data book, but you can see that they have quite a few jobs in here that would meet the qualifications of role in terms of experience. All right, so you have librarians, writers, creative artists. You have more technical areas of working in libraries as well, photographers, movie people, that sort of stuff as well. Creative designers, graphic designers, and you can see over here you also have athletes, coaches, referees, and that type of stuff as well. Okay, all of this is of course in the reference as well, and you can just take a look on our website. We'll have this all linked up for you, so it'll be really easy for you to just click your way through them. All right, it's always great to take a look at court cases that clarify all of these elements here. So you have Grisenko versus Canada, and this person worked across a few borders, and they really helped to define what is meant by world-class level in this case. Okay, so this person here, as you can see, this is a very short summary of this case. By the way, you'll have to read through it yourself to get a better perspective on it. But this person was a full-time Russian drama teacher with experience in Russian and Latvian choreography, stage management, acting, etc. If you remember from the previous chart of eligible economic activities, this was one of them. So choreography and things like that was included on that list. However, she wasn't accepted under the self-employed category just because she was a full-time employee of the school. So she wasn't self-employed. All right, something we'll take a look at in a minute again as well to go deeper into it. And in this one, the really interesting part was that she participated in international festivals. So she participated in festivals in, I think it was Germany, Latvia, and a couple other countries. So she argued that she performed internationally, which should make her world class, but the agent said that it's a little bit different, being world class versus working internationally. All right, and also her business plan was not very strong. All right, so it's always great to learn from these court cases, just because, like I said, I've said this a few times already, of course, it's great to put a sort of a perspective on the laws and see a human story through these laws. So for this person here, there was a difference between, of course, being internationally recognized and being world class. While this person worked in a few different countries, that did not necessarily make her a world class in her area of choreography. Okay, there was also another really interesting case about this as well. This is just with regard to the definition of self-employed. This person was trying to apply under the self-employed category as a Chinese medicine specialist, and he was arguing that Chinese medicine is a cultural activity because you can't separate the culture of China from the medicine that he would offer for people in Canada. Okay, so he was trying to open up a medicine training center in Vancouver, And he did not meet those self-employed definitions just because they said that he didn't have the required experience of being self-employed. Again, this is from looking at that list from before. You also have this list, of course, in your test day data book on page 32. So he didn't have experience in one of those areas. And as you can see, just because of that, for his future plans as well in Canada, Chinese traditional medicine, it's not considered a cultural activity under the Act and regulations. So yes, it is obviously a cultural activity in real life, but with regard to the Act and the regulations, they did not consider it to be a cultural activity that would be a specified economic activity that the person could use in Canada. Okay, so as per Regulation 100, the minute that a person does not meet the initial definitions, in this case he didn't meet those experience definitions, the application stops. It will not carry forward. Okay, and those definitions, of course, they can't really be interpreted differently. The knock is the knock, of course. Okay, like I said, this is on page 31, 32 of your test date data book, and it's in the simulations as well, so I hope it clarifies a lot of those little details. All right, so we just took a look at relevant experience with regard to a self-employed person. So you can see that when they say relevant experience, it's not as easy as it seems. There are quite a few little layers that you're going to have to look through. Another one, of course, is the intention and ability to become self-employed in Canada. So this is a very, very important one. If you remember from one of the previous slides as well, just when we started, the person has to have all three of these. So the intention and ability is also a very, very important part of the definition that a person needs to meet in order to be accepted under the self-employed category. All right, so you have points in there. The points, according to Regulation 102, the point system helps the agent to see if the person can become economically established in Canada. We're going to have another video about the points system for you later on, but we'll move on for now because we're still sticking with the definitions that we need to clarify first. Okay, just like I said before, you're going to have a video on the points system. But for now, it's really important to think of this as a person who is engaged in cultural activities, as an athlete or a farmer as well. They really need to have a business side in order to be accepted into the self-employed category. So it's not enough to be the best guitarist in the whole world. They have to have that business side so that the agent can be convinced that they can become self-employed and economically established in Canada. Okay, so you might be wondering how a person can actually prove this. There are quite a few ways. So one of the biggest ones is with finances. If you look at the points system, you might see that there aren't really any financial requirements for a self-employed person. However, they would have to convince the agent that they can create employment opportunity for themselves with regard to the amount of money that they have to invest in their own self-employment. Okay, and of course they have to have enough money to support themselves, their family. This of course includes the proof of funds, but they have to really be sure to have enough money to make their business as well. Okay, so they also have to prove that with regard to their cultural activities or athletics or farm management experience, that they have been able to make enough money to support themselves. And they would also continue to do this while they're in Canada. Okay, and of course they have to be self-supporting until their self-employment has been made. Okay, there are some other ways that they would have to prove that they can have the ability to become self-employed in Canada, and that would of course involve that business side that we talked about earlier. So one of those big areas is with a business plan that they would have to show. Partnerships as well, so if they have an opportunity to make some partnerships that would help them in their future business in Canada, that would be a great idea as well. Okay, an exploratory visit would really show that intention as well. Business experience. So the same thing, if you have the best guitarist in the entire world, but he's never organized the business side of his work, then that would be a big red flag as well. And finally, language ability. So all of these, when you take a look at these as well, you'll see that the points in the self-employed category aren't that high. It's 35 points. However, remember that they also have to prove the intention and ability to become self-employed in Canada. So without proving this, even if they might have 100 points, if they can't prove this, then they will not likely meet the definition that the agent is looking for. And ways to meet these definitions would include all of these. And you might not find this in IRPA, but you can find this, of course, in the manual as well. And also by looking at some of the court cases that we'll take a look at as well. Okay, so for farmers, remember it's a little bit different just because they have to purchase and manage a farm. Purchasing a farm is incredibly expensive. So it's a little bit different than someone who is maybe a painter, photographer, or something like that, right? With a farmer, they have to purchase the farm. So it can be millions of dollars. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of examples here of cases. This will help really clarify this, and of course to help us look at these laws through a person's story. Okay, so with this one here, this will help answer the question, of course, of the person who meets those initial definitions of self-employed can be accepted under this class if they don't really have a viable business plan. So this one here was a really interesting case as well, and I really recommend you read this one. Okay, so she had, this was a Korean actress with 40 years of experience, and she wanted to apply for permanent residency under the self-employed category because she wanted to open a drama school in Vancouver. All right, so with this case here, she was unfortunately rejected from the self-employed category for a few reasons that you'll see that can help you, of course, realize if a person has that intention and ability to become self-employed in Canada. All right, so like I said before, she was an actress with 40 years of experience in acting, which is pretty incredible. Except the agent found that she didn't have any teaching experience, which is what she wanted to do in Canada, and she didn't have any business experience either. So that, of course, would put a big question mark on her ability to become self-employed in Canada in the role that she wanted to, that she has experience in. Okay, also she did have a business plan, except they said she hadn't really taken any steps towards establishing this plan. And they said it wasn't exactly strong either. Okay, and of course, one of those big issues if you're going to start a business in Canada, as I'm sure most of you will when you finish your ICCRC requirements, English or French ability is mandatory. You can't really, she was going to work in Vancouver, and you can't really start a business, I would say, in Vancouver or a lot of places in Canada if you don't have English ability. So the agent found that that would be a very big roadblock for her to start her business in Vancouver. Okay, so with this one here, you can see that planning is absolutely essential for these candidates. The candidate really has to be able to demonstrate that they can turn the business plan into an actual business. And this would, of course, be with business experience, in her case, business experience, teaching experience, language, etc. So it's not, this, of course, is a really great example showing you that you can have 100 years of experience, you could be the best actress in the whole world, but if you can't, if the agent is not convinced that you can become self-employed in Canada, which includes, of course, that business side, then they will not accept the application because the person would not meet the definitions. All right, so we have another case for you here as well. This is Sahota versus Canada. And again, it's a very, very interesting case just because it really helps you to understand that definition that is required in order for someone to be eligible to apply under the self-employed category. Okay, so this person here was a wheat and rice farmer in India, and he had 30 years of experience. So he wanted to go to Canada to buy and manage a farm where he could grow fruit and vegetables commercially. Unfortunately, this person was not found to have met the conditions of the self-employed category because he did have the finances, he had the role, he had the experience. However, he didn't really have any knowledge of Canada in general. Anybody who has ever worked on a farm or been around a farm, you would understand that it's really an art form. It's a science. It's very, very, very difficult work as well. So it's not enough just to say he's a farmer from India who worked with wheat and rice before. Canada obviously has different geography, weather, crops, everything. And he didn't display any knowledge of that at all. So he did have a business plan, however, he didn't understand it because he didn't speak any English or French. So the agent, again, was not convinced that he could establish a business in Canada. Okay, so even though he had the money, the experience, everything like that, obviously the minimum amount of points as well. Again, they have to meet all three of those elements where they're going to be self-sufficient in Canada as well. Okay, so remember that it's also forward-looking. The agent's going to take a look to see how well this person would be able to establish himself or herself in Canada. And that role that they're going to perform in Canada is very, very specific. It's based on, of course, their experience in the past, what they do, and what they're going to continue to do in Canada as well. So something as general as farming, in this case, the agent didn't think that farming rice and wheat is the same as farming fruit and vegetable in Ontario, which is why, of course, this applicant was not accepted. All right, so we've talked about relevant experience in detail. I hope those cases really help to clarify the intention and ability to be self-employed in Canada. What we're going to talk about now is the intention and ability to make a significant contribution to specific economic activities in Canada. Specifically in here, we're going to take a look at specific economic activities in Canada as well. Okay, so people who work in sports and culture, according to OP8, by meeting the experience, as we talked about before, ability and intent, the person should, there's a reasonable expectation that the person should continue that work in Canada. For farmers, it's a little bit different. Remember that they have to purchase and manage a farm. So by meeting all of those requirements that we talked about before, so the money, the experience, ability, intent, this person is expected to buy a farm and manage that farm as well, even though their experience, of course, can be simply in management of a farm in their country. Okay, so let's move on to talk about the significant contribution part of this. All right, so it is a little bit localized as well. So it's the discretion of the officer. He plays a large role in deciding this, according to OP8, and it's decided on a case-by-case basis. So let's take a look at a librarian. If you took a look on page 32 of your test date data book, you can see that a librarian is in those specified economic activities. And a librarian who's moving to a small town, sure, he or she will make a significant contribution at a local level. At a national level, it would be a little bit different. Maybe in this case, for example, a journalist who writes for a few national publications, he or she would make a larger contribution nationally. But the officer would assess these on a case-by-case basis. Okay, an example of this is in another case that is pretty interesting to read. This one is from 2015 as well, so it's pretty current and very interesting as well. It gives you a lot of insight into the self-employed category in general. Okay, so this person here was a professional poker player in the States, and he wanted to apply for permanent residency in Canada under self-employed as an athlete. And you'll be interested to see as well that poker players and chess players are actually considered athletes if you look in the NOC for it. Unfortunately for him, he was not accepted as a self-employed person. Okay, so he met everything else. So he had the finances, he showed that he was self-employed in poker. He made his money playing poker, not doing something else. And he would continue to do so in Canada because in the case, they showed that he played online poker. So that can be pretty much anywhere. They would just put money into his account. However, the agent thought that he wouldn't be able to make a really significant contribution to those activities in Canada. Okay, so we can see what we can learn from this. This person really, anybody really who wants to prove that intent and ability in Canada has to really be able to prove that they can make a contribution to the country in general. And with self-employed applicants, of course, it's really important to look through the NOC for all of the different roles that people have. And remember that with self-employed, as we saw from the previous case with Ding as well, they have to meet those categories. Okay, so in Ding, for example, if the person is the best Chinese medicine specialist in the whole world and wanted to apply under the self-employed category, again, he wouldn't meet the criteria, the initial definition, just because it's not in the specified economic activities. Okay, so with that, that just about concludes our lesson here. So we talked about the relevant experience that a person needs to have in order to be considered under the self-employed category. That intention and ability is essential to prove. And of course, the intention and ability to make a significant contribution to specified economic activities in Canada is essential as well. All right, so a big thank you for watching and listening. As always, I'm Kyle Broda here for FullSkillsExamPrep.com. And this is produced in partnership with IDP IELTS, RCICCPD, Integra, and Scotiabank. So thanks again for listening. Have yourselves a really, really great day. And stay tuned for more lessons on this.